All right. So for anybody that came in a little bit after the intro, I just want to make sure we go over how this presentation will work today. So we have our panelists here with us today. They will guide us through some conversation, but also are welcoming any questions that the audience may have too. If you have questions for the panel, if you could please put them in the chat. I will read off the questions, but just another reminder that the only people who should answer the questions are those here with us today that are diagnosed with dementia. So thank y'all so much. We can go ahead and get started, Joy, whenever you're ready.
Well, I'm Joy Spahn, and I'm one of the support team leaders for the National Council of Dementia Minds. And apparently you can hear my dog has decided that she wants to be part of this group. So I will try and keep her quiet as much as possible. Why don't we go around the group and you can introduce yourself and maybe tell a little bit about when you got your diagnosis and what that experience was like for you. And then we'll maybe talk a little bit about Dementia Minds and what that means to you. So Linda, you're at the top of my screen. So why don't we start with you?
Hi, everyone. Thank you for taking time out of your day and spending it with us. It's appreciated. My name is Linda Brewster. I'm in Gillette, Wyoming, and I was diagnosed in 2021. I actually diagnosed myself. I'm a psychologist. All the testing showed that I have shrinkage of the hippocampus, yeah. And it looks like I've had about 9 strokes. So I was diagnosed with MCI, since graduated to dementia. And let's see what else. I was 57 when I was diagnosed, and it's still kind of, they're still trying to figure out everything that's going on in my brain. So it's a journey still continuing. And that's about it for me. And my dog is around barking too, so I'll mute myself when he's out being a terror.
Thank you, Linda. I just wanted to add to MCI is mild cognitive impairment for folks that are not familiar with some of the acronyms. So in the chat box, please feel free to to ask any questions like that as well. So thank you, Linda. Miriam, you're the next one on my screen. So if you want to tell us a little bit about yourself and when you were diagnosed and what you were diagnosed with and what your life's been with since that diagnosis.
Okay, hi everybody. As Linda said, thank you for being with us today and taking some time out of your schedule. My name is Miriam Owens. I live with my family and my dog in Richmond, Virginia. And I was diagnosed with Lewy body dementia in 2022, December to be exact. I was 54 at the time. I did not have a hard time getting a diagnosis. I went to a very skilled and knowledgeable neurologist who gave me that diagnosis at my first appointment with him. In retrospect, I have to say that I had kind of a delayed reaction to the diagnosis because he didn't seem particularly concerned when he gave it. He kind of just gave me the diagnosis as if he was telling me I had a stomach flu or something. You know, he just said, this is what I think this is, but there was nothing else to indicate to me that I should be overly concerned. It wasn't until I did some of my own research and realized what I indeed do have and how that typically progresses that I became concerned. And for me, it's about finding a sense of control with an illness that takes away so much of the control, of very basic functions that we take for granted when those things are not impaired. So I'm excited to be a part of this group and groups like it because it does give me back some power and some control over how I live well with Lewy body dementia. So thanks again for joining us. And I hope that something we say today can be encouraging and be of help to you in some way.
Thank you, Miriam. Carl, you're the next on my hit list here on my screen.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks very much for taking the time to spend some time with us. My name's Carl Ladd. I'm 59 years old and was diagnosed with Lewy body dementia in March of 2023, shortly after Miriam. We've been on this journey together, it seems like. I live in Grofton, New Hampshire, which is in the northernmost part of our state, close to the Canadian border. I was medically retired by my neurologist on the day that I was diagnosed, which was really quite a blow because I was expecting to work for about 10 more years. So that certainly put a big crimp in what my retirement plans were going to look like. I was a lifelong educator, retired superintendent of schools. When I retired, I was the executive director of our state superintendents association. So I did a lot of advocacy work at the state house and at the national level as well on behalf of public education. And so I really felt like when I got my diagnosis and I was retired kind of prematurely, I felt like my purpose in life had really been taken away. I have a wonderful family. I have a 4-year-old grandson who lives right next door. So that is a purpose, but it's not the type of purpose that really drives someone like me. So it took me about a year really to recover from the diagnosis because like Miriam, I had an outstanding neurologist who diagnosed me right away, but she's known me for a long time because I had a stroke in 2017. And but I mean, even though I had a really good relationship with her, basically she said, you know, go get your affairs in order and do some research because the prognosis of this disease is really not very good. And so when I went home and did the research, I curled up in a hole for about 6 months because I thought for sure I was just going to be this drooling idiot in a short period of time. My grandson wouldn't know who I was, and I would be dead in 5 years. It's taken me a while, but thanks to National Council of Dementia Minds and other groups that I belong to, I've come to realize that for Lewy body dementia, and I think for every dementia, it's individual and it's unique for each individual. And I finally had a conversation with my neurologist, and she said timelines don't matter. She said, don't worry about timetables. She said, live your life, live it well, and do everything you can to slow the progression. And that's what I've been trying to do. Thanks to NCDM, I now feel like I have a purpose again in trying to advocate on behalf of folks with dementia and to destigmatize dementia and kind of what we're going through. So many folks, when they think of dementia, they automatically think of A, Alzheimer's, and B, end of life Alzheimer's. And there's a lot of life before then, and every dementia is different. So I'm excited to try to help as much as I can. And I look forward to answering any questions. And I look forward to hearing from everyone else because they're all much smarter than I am. So.
Thank you, Carl. That was great. Nia?
Hello, everyone. I'm Nia Mostasero, and I echo everyone's sentiments on thanking you for having us today. It's definitely our pleasure. I live by myself with a dog or an emotional support dog in Meridian, Idaho, right outside of Boise. I spent 23 years in the Air Force, and I started exhibiting symptoms while I was in the Air Force. In 2017, I was diagnosed, I was diagnosed with early onset dementia 4 months after I retired from the Air Force. I had a wonderful neurologist and a wonderful primary care manager that ruled out several other illnesses to make sure that it wasn't something else because of my age. I was 42 at the time. I am 49 now, and in 2022, I was diagnosed specifically with chronic traumatic encephalopathy dementia due to traumatic brain injuries that I've sustained. Like Carl, when I was diagnosed in 17 with early onset dementia, I went through about a year of major depression. I mourned my future, all the things that I thought I was going to do. I wanted to be a CEO of a nonprofit for women and children. I wanted to work in Christian counseling and prison ministry. I had all the things that I wanted to do. So I went through all the stages of grief. And that's something that I wish that I had been told that I would experience. Instead, my neurologist was very good. He told me when he diagnosed me that I would have 5 to 8 good years left, watch the movie Still Alice and get my affairs in order, and also to get in touch with the Alzheimer's Association. I'm thankful for him to this day because all of those things did serve me very well, but I just wish that I had a little bit more information and resources at the time. I'm living well right now because I'm living a very steady and a happy life. Like Carl and the others, we have to have purpose because we feel like we've lost so much. So we have to sort of reinvent ourselves with this disease. And I've done that. You know, I'm back at modeling, doing pageants. I'm doing the things that don't require me to think. Funny enough, but I want to thank you all for having me here. And that's all that I have for the moment.
Thank you, Nia. That was inspiring. So thank you for sharing your story. We did have one question. If we wanted to have, let me see what that is. The question was, I don't know, Ellen, do you want to read the questions then?
I'm
I see you
happy
popped
to.
back on. Yep.
Yeah, I'm happy to. Looks like this one comes from Linda. It says, were you given information for help when you were told about your diagnosis?
I see some heads shaking. Anybody want to respond to that?
I
Carl?
wasn't given any information other than to go home and do some research. And it wasn't until I started asking questions that I started getting some answers from the neurologist. But primarily, I reached out to the Lewy Body Dementia Association and the Lewy Body Dementia Resource Center to get the information that I needed because there was none. And in my state, there's very little support for dementia for folks who are going through this kind of thing. So there was no social worker or anyone to fall back on. So it was all any information I got, I found out myself.
For me, I like asking that question because it's very interesting, especially since there's so many people just spread out all over, from bigger cities to like me in a rural area. When I was told, get your affairs in order, do the sleep cognitive behavior, and that we don't know where tomorrow will end. So you have mild cognitive impairment now, but we don't know what tomorrow will bring. So for me, it was, we just moved to Wyoming, so I don't know where anything is, and we're in a rural area. So for me, it was just like, okay, you're walking out with absolutely nothing but that gut punch. So it was just Mia, you said you got at least told to get a hold of Alzheimer's Association. So for you, was that helpful to walk out with at least that?
Absolutely, because through the Alzheimer's Association, I was involved after I went through my year of depression. I contacted them and I was involved in an early stage support group. They had me doing lots of volunteerism with them, you know, media, newspapers. And then I was elected or nominated to, and I was put on the early stage advisory board, you know, for the Alzheimer's Association. So it really gave me a lot of purpose. That little bit of advice did. And it grew to me getting in touch with National Council of Dementia Minds and other organizations that I'm involved with.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you all so much. We have a bunch of questions that just came in, some really good questions. I figured we would get a good flood. So let's see what we can get through today. The next one says, are there any sensory or environmental ways companies and the public could support you better that you find?
I'd like to answer that. I think there is kind of a trend that has started with some companies at least offering dementia-friendly spaces. You know, sometimes you can find them in airports, some churches do. So that's a good start. It's a trend that needs to continue because the goal is really with the prevalence of dementia. I think people don't realize how many people have some form of dementia. It's important that our communities begin to think about the infrastructure and how those citizens can live and function well while being immersed in their communities and not having to withdraw, because dementia can be very isolating. Because I'll speak for myself, and I'm sure my colleagues will agree, very common places in the community can become overwhelming very, very quickly. And when that happens, the unraveling happens at lightning speed for me. I don't know about anybody else, and I have to get out of there. So it is important, and it will become more important to have dementia-friendly spaces in our communities kind of considered on every level of development. Schools, churches, workplaces, just you name it. It's going to be important for that to continue for people with dementia to thrive.
Miriam, I love what you just said. Can you clarify a little bit more what a helpful dementia-friendly environment might look like for you?
For me, that is a space with reduced noise. And noise doesn't have to be a blaring, you know, speaker. For us, sometimes noise that can become unbearable, like in a restaurant, you know, is the clanking of the forks on the plates as people are eating. You know, enough of that going on, along with that murmuring of conversation at the different tables. If the lighting is weird, you know, that's another thing environmentally that makes me uncomfortable. So a space that has lighting that is conducive to helping a person with, you know, these hypersensitivities to relax. Lighting that's dimmed, maybe quiet, maybe soft music playing, and not busy, just kind of a still space to retreat to, kind of recharge, a reboot if necessary, and then make the decision when I'm ready to go back into the other environment if that's necessary.
Perfect. Thank you so much. That was really helpful.
You're welcome.
All right. Our next question we have, it says, are there suggestions for helping someone who doesn't want to accept their diagnosis? It has been 4 years and there is still no acceptance. And this is a question I would say we get from families pretty often. So anybody have any good input on that?
When I was diagnosed, I had to go to Cleveland Clinic, actually part of a research program. The MRI was there. They said the same thing that my doctor had told me, for some of my family members to say, okay, she's not faking it, or okay, she has something. So for me, I'm sorry, one more time, the question.
Sure thing. So the question is, do you have any suggestions for helping someone who doesn't want to accept their diagnosis?
So for me, I had sort of accepted it, right? Because you hear all this from your family, then you're like, okay, maybe I don't. Maybe it's just me, I'm thinking that way. So for me, it took some of my family members to say, okay, yeah, you have something, for me to start pushing and ignore them and say, okay, I have something, I need to figure out what. So then I started pushing my doctors and pushing and pushing and pushing, for answers, like they would do an MRI and sometimes wouldn't even tell me what was on the MRI. I would have to say, let me see my brain scans. What is that? What is that? What is that? To get that information. My 3 children grew up with their step grandfather who died of Alzheimer's, and my mom had dementia. So they seen that environment. So for them, they were more willing to accept that I had something wrong, you know. Therapy definitely helps. Helping that person grieve. For all of us, we go through that grieving for what life could have been and what we don't understand it can be now. Because when you're diagnosed, you're not thinking, oh, I'm still going to have a great life. You're thinking, okay, get my affairs in order. I'm going to die tomorrow, So it's just a matter of coming together as a unit, coming together as family, and helping that person through all of this, instead of being, oh, you're fine, you look fine, or today you sound great. That doesn't mean I am tomorrow.
Yeah, I'd
Nia?
like to build on, oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Mia.
For me, I have a little bit of a different approach. I really don't care about the diagnosis so much as I would care about making sure they have everything that they need. I wouldn't just throw it, try to jam it down their throat. You have Alzheimer's, that doesn't matter. All that matters is that they're loved, they're supported, they have all the resources, their symptoms are being addressed. That's all that they really need, in my opinion.
And I think to just build on that a little bit is to kind of find out maybe what they're afraid of from the diagnosis. Are they afraid, like I was, that you're just going to end up sitting in a corner and not being able to do anything, that you're not going to be able to live your life? And if you can find out what they're afraid of with the diagnosis, sometimes you can either point them in the right direction to get some help, or to like for me, I found some support groups that really showed me that I could live my life really well, even with dementia. I might have to do things differently. And sometimes that's a hard thing, for especially, as we get older, we don't want to do things differently. By God, we want to do them the way we've always done them. But we learn, and hopefully we continue to learn, that we just have to do things differently. If I want to, if I want to, if I want to like cook something, I know that I need to have a very clear-cut recipe now. I can't do anything off the cuff because it's a disaster. And I know that I need to have my wife close by so that when inevitably I mess something up, she can help me fix it. Now, that's not something that I've ever had to do before. I was always a very good cook. But now I know that that's just a reality, that if I want to continue to do that, I just have to do it differently. So I think that sometimes we're so afraid that when we get the diagnosis that we're not going to be who we were. And no, you're not. You're gonna be different. You're gonna change. But it can be changed for the better. I will tell you that my wife and my kids think that I am a more present and a much calmer person now since my diagnosis than I was when I was working 60 to 80 hours a week, going to Washington, D.C. and all over the country, flying here, there, and everywhere, never home, never around for things. They'll tell you that they are not happy that I have Lewy body dementia, but they're very happy that I'm home and that I'm finally content enough to enjoy my life. So I think, if we can find out what they're afraid of, maybe we can help them overcome that so that they can accept the diagnosis and without acceptance, I agree with Nia. We just need to deal with whatever the symptoms they have and make sure that they have whatever they need, and work around them.
All right, thank y'all so much. I think it's so important to acknowledge how all three of you had a totally different perspective and a totally different take on that. And so I think that really empowers individual families, to feel like whatever you do and whatever feels right to you and to the person diagnosed, like that's the right thing to do for you. And you don't have to do the same thing for everybody. So I found that a big takeaway from that too. Okay, our next question. It says, I'm thinking at the time of your diagnosis, were you offered any behavioral health resources? This person mentions how dementia and depression can often co-occur. Has anybody had that experience? No.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I was given quite a bit of help from my primary care physician. Once the neurologist tossed me back to him, he helped set me up with a counselor right away, and she did help walk me through and deal with some of those things. But it wasn't an automatic thing from the neurologist. I will say it was more from my primary care physician. That was the behavioral health support that I got.
Anybody else have anything they wanted to add to that one? Okay.
I just wanted to add that I was not offered that type of support. I wasn't really offered any support, but I want to say that this is a space that we all can be more vocal about. Those of us who are living with dementia, those of us who are affected by it in some way, either because of a family member or even those of us who work with people who have dementia in a professional capacity. It just seems to me that many neurologists or the diagnosing physicians, there seems to be a disconnect. So they can give a diagnosis and they do, but somehow they're not realizing that along with that diagnosis, we need to have, it's almost like palliative care needs to start right then, right at that first visit, not later on down the line. Because a lot of people don't understand all that will come about as a result of a dementia diagnosis. But the neurologists and those diagnosing the conditions typically do. And so it just seems to me that because we're learning now that that is so important to learn about early on so that we can access supports to help us as we journey. I think we have a great opportunity to take this information back to our physicians to say, You know, when I was diagnosed, you know, I thank you for that. It was great to get a diagnosis, but I also needed blah, 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 you know, whatever that is, you know, emotional, social, psychological, whatever kind of support would have been helpful from the outset. So I hope that if there is a takeaway from this meeting today, that we'll all just kind of, you know, take what we've learned and seek to apply it somewhere, somehow, so that the doctors are better educated and understand what we need right from the very beginning.
Absolutely. I agree with Ms. Miriam. It's almost like a marriage. Once you have dementia, it's you need that palliative care, or you need a warm handoff to a team who's going to be there with you to walk with you basically for the rest of your life. And I don't see where someone's kind of put that into play yet. You know, I don't really see that. Everyone that I know has been putting their own teams together, putting their own nurse team, putting their own doctors, and, you know, your mental health. And, you know, if you have other chronic illnesses, connecting all those dots ourselves. But we don't really have like a social worker or a caseworker that's doing that for us. So missed opportunity. Absolutely, Miss Miriam.
The Alzheimer's Association is actually working on that right now. I'm a member of the early stage advisory group for the National Alzheimer's. And right now they're working on a project. It's an 8-year pilot program called the Navigational Guide. So how it's going to be set up is that when a person is diagnosed, right, they're instantly connected with someone who not only works with them, they also work with the caregiver or care partner, the doctor, the neurologist, and everybody involved, start to finish. So if you're diagnosed, you can reach out to them and tell them, okay, I was diagnosed, and they help talk to all the doctors so you don't have to. So if your medication has an issue, they help get all of that. So you don't have to call the neurologist, your primary and other doctors, or, you know, the pharmacy. They help actually navigate all of that. So you have one person walk you down the aisle, start to finish, through hospice, all of that. So they're actually just started an 8-year pilot program for that. So fingers crossed, they work out all the kinks. UCLA in California actually has this program working, but they're not offering as much as the Alzheimer's is going to be offering in their pilot program. So.
All right, definitely fingers crossed. It's encouraging to know that there's, you know, some new things coming out there. Okay, our next question is, let me scroll back up. We just got a new question. All right, do any of you have any suggestions on how family members can support their loved ones? It says, as you have mentioned, it can be overwhelming and the information and resources are not always provided early on. So any advice for how family members can better support their loved ones?
I'll start. I think it's a matter of knowing that person's life, right? So I don't live where my kids are. They're in California, Michigan. So I don't live with them. So for me, it's a matter of them knowing my life. Okay, mom goes to bed early because she sunsets, but she's awake early. So let me figure out when's a good time to call and check in on her. Things like that. So that's important to me. They can get familiar with your doctors, you know, so that way if I'm confused about it, they can easily call up the doctor and say, okay, my mom's telling me 2 different things. So I think it's just a matter of getting familiar with their life, with where their medicines are, their routine, you know, when do you shower, when do you eat, that kind of thing, to be a part of that. Even though they're not here, they can still be a part of that group with me. do text messages as a group, hey mom, how are you, kind of thing, so that everybody's involved in it. And definitely, if they think it's overwhelming for them to find resources, try being us. Sometimes this wonderful world of the internet, I just want to throw out the window with my computer. So get resources that they feel they can bring to us. And hey, mom, I found this, what do you think about trying that? Don't force it on us. Definitely ask our opinion.
For me, I guess a couple words of advice I might give would be exercise lots of patience and compassion. Patience for sure. I sometimes, if I get confused, I will ask my wife the same question 5 times in a row because I don't remember the answer. And she's very patient. She just answers the question the same way each time. And my daughters have kind of picked up that cue and have done the same thing. And I think that we're at somebody who lives with dementia, we struggle with so many things that used to be so easy. And for our loved ones to have patience to let us struggle. Don't jump in so quickly to fix everything. Let us struggle a little bit to try to do it because I don't want to lose my independence completely. I may struggle with something, but I can still do it. And just the compassion to know that, I'm going to have a bad day and that, sometimes I just need a hug to get through the day. And, I think that I think sometimes, and I know that my wife does this, she worries so much for my safety. She tries to wrap me in bubble wrap, but I still need to live my life. But it's hard for her. It's definitely hard for caregivers, and I think we all understand that. And I have so much compassion for my wife and my family for what they're going through with me. But just them having the compassion toward me and patience has made my life so much better in trying to deal with this.
For me, it's such an individualized question because, and I really do believe that Linda was onto something. You have to know your person ins and outs. I have a document that I downloaded from a website that I found that had everything outlined from, I like to get up this time in the morning. I like this type of music. I like to sit on the porch. Please don't cut my hair. All the things, or, I like my lashes to be done. I just have a document that says all of my likes and wants. But when it comes to everyday things, for me, I'm a retired military veteran, career. I don't like to ask for help. So I will never just say, it's very rare that I will say, hey, son, can you please help me with X, Y, and Z? So I need a caregiver to come in and see the deficits and just sort of jump in and help me. Like I had a prime example was I didn't realize that I was messing up doing my pill containers, but my neurologist asked for a home health nurse to come and sort of do an assessment of my living space. And they did an assessment of my pill containers and found out that I was doing them wrong. So now I have a home health nurse coming once a month and doing all my pills for me. I wouldn't have known. So a lot of times we also don't know what we don't know. So we need people to just jump in and help us. So that's sort of my take on it. Thank you.
All right, thank y'all. Our next question is, what would your advice be to someone who suspects that they have dementia?
Go to their doctor. Take notes. I took 6 months of notes when I went to my doctor because I was messing up a lot at work. And I took the notes. I had my own diagnoses, but yeah, go to your doctor, let him know. I mean, I didn't even tell my husband that I was going or what was going on with me. I just took the notes, and then once it was confirmed, of course, my husband got involved. I wouldn't recommend that. I would recommend that you tell your care partner or your family member, but yeah, go to your doctor. The earlier you can get a diagnosis, the better.
And also realize that it may not be dementia. Don't just think, oh my gosh, my memory is going. I'm having dementia symptoms. Because it could be vitamin deficiencies, it could be diabetes, you could have had a stroke, it could be any celiac, it could be gluten. Believe it or not, I actually have celiac disease as well, and gluten affects my memory. So that is one other thing. So, just don't panic, is what I'm trying to say. Don't panic. See specialists to rule out other things.
All right. Our next question is, are there suggestions to help someone to do things that will help them slow down the progression of their disease?
You mean, are they asking like activities to help?
I think so. Any tips that you guys have that can slow disease progression, activities or self-care tips or things like that, I think.
I think definitely stay active, because the more active you are, the more your brain interacts with that, the more blood flow and all that other good stuff, that natural high you get. Stay active. Don't just, oh, I have it, and sit in a chair and spend your life that way. Do some puzzles, do some games. There's all kinds of brain activity games that you can download. Stay interactive and busy with like Dementia Minds, Alzheimer's Association. Keep your brain working. Don't just sit and shut down.
For me, I work out 6 days a week, early in the morning, because that is when I'm freshest. I've completely overhauled my diet. I'm no sugar, low carbs, or I'm gluten-free because of the celiac. And I have a modified Mediterranean diet because they say the omegas and things like that are good for your brain. So make as many life changes that you can. What's good for the heart is good for the mind.
All right. Our next question is, in y'all's experience, do y'all feel that each state in our country, some states have a lot more knowledge than others and some have a lot less? Is that what you guys see meeting other people through this organization?
Most definitely. I can say in New Hampshire, the resources available to us are very, very limited in this area. I know that my neighbors to the south in Massachusetts, because I used to work there as well, the resources are very different. There are a lot of resources for folks living in dementia. I know there are in New York and in Vermont, but I know here in New Hampshire, we have very limited resources.
The same in Wyoming.
Texas, San Antonio, Texas, where I came from, they have the UTSA health system, which was amazing. They have an amazing memory care system out there. But I also visited Carl, Boston. And the Boston VA memory care was amazing. I went to the Boston Memory Center, amazing.
Yeah,
Out here in Idaho, not so much.
Right. And I think we might have time for maybe one more question. And I think this is a really interesting question. So Someone wrote in, how do we determine if someone should still live on their own once they've been diagnosed?
Wow, I live alone, so it's a slippery slope. Um, I have neighbors that check on me. I have a guy friend. I may be getting married in a year or two, so I won't be living alone much longer. But yay! Um, but just, heaven forbid if that does not happen. I honestly don't know. That's an excellent question because I don't want to lose my independence too early. That's very important to me.
I think it's individualized. I know we keep saying that about a lot of things, but it really is. It just depends upon where you're at in that stage. And it goes back to getting to know that person who has it and being in that group with the doctors, like the same thing with retiring driving. Uh,
Safety.
it's just that conversation that you have to have. I have walls jump in front of me all the time, so I have little bruises all over my hands. But that doesn't mean I'm ready to go in a home, you know, probably just put some cushions around the doorknobs and stuff. So it's just individualized. And how can you keep that person in their home? How can you make their home environment better? But yeah, those are tough conversations to have.
No, I had the conversation with my wife shortly after I was diagnosed. And we made the decision together that if I ever got to the point where I became physical in any way, and again, it's around a safety issue, that was time for me to go into a facility that it would not be right for her to have to deal with that at home. But we had that conversation together.
All right. So we are coming up right at the 1 o'clock hour. Joy or any of our panelists, do y'all have anything else you'd like to add here today?
Great questions. Thank you for the
Absolutely.
questions.
I would just like to say that, dementia is such a tricky kind of illness to have because there's a progression that occurs. And like we have said early on in this meeting, you know, sometimes there's a very rapid progression with some people and some forms of dementia, but more often than not, it's a slow progression during which many of us are very aware of the skills we are losing, the sensations that we no longer have, for example, sense of smell and taste, the hallucinations that we experience. So we have an awareness of what is happening, of what we are losing. And so we are experiencing this sense of profound loss over and over and over and over again. And so daily, we have to make the decision to wake up, acknowledge that this is happening, and choose to have a good day, or at least try to have a good day. And so I would say if those caring for us and living with us could just empathize with that and kind of just pay attention, be aware of what we're doing in our space. If we forget things, if we ask you the same question 20 times, just answer it, please. Don't say, don't you remember? Because no, we don't remember. Otherwise, we wouldn't be asking. That kind of thing, just compassion, help us to preserve our dignity as long as you can, and allow us to be as independent as we can for as long as possible. And again, thank you. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Miriam. And thank you so much to all of our panelists. Truly, this was inspiring today. And it is so amazing to hear all of your perspectives and your experience. And I can't thank y'all enough for taking the time out of your day to share that with us. So thank y'all so, so, so much. We really, really appreciate it. And thank you to everyone that joined us today. And thank y'all so much. Everybody have a good rest of your day.
Bye-bye.